Oh, was it worth the wait? Welcome to Texas, folks. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 was directed by David Blue Garcia and stars Sarah Yarkin and Elsie Fisher. And it follows the story of a group of idealistic young friends who is looking to settle on a property in a remote Texas town, but unleashes an unspeakable evil in the form of Leatherface instead. Welcome back, guys, to my Texas Chainsaw Massacre film review series. If you've not viewed them yet, I reviewed every single one of them up to this point, and I'll have them in the link in the description down below, so go check those out when you can. We'll have them posted down below, followed by a ranking, which will come in the next 2, 3, 4 days. So this is a movie that I've been anticipating since I started this film review series. It's a movie that I knew was coming out as soon as I did the first film's review. I knew it was coming out on the 18th on Netflix, and I was hoping to get it done and to get to this particular one by that date, but I didn't. Things kept on coming up, and I apologize for that. I was hoping to make the deadline. This was one film review series. I was hoping to make the deadline, but it didn't work out that way, but you're getting the review nonetheless right now. I've heard mixed to positive reviews about this. Some says that it's like the best that they've ever seen. Others say that it's easily forgettable. Just been kind of mixed. What horror movie doesn't get mixed? It's very rare that a horror movie nowadays gets a straight up positive review. So was this to my expectations? Was this worth the almost long wait that I finally was able to watch it? Well, let's find out. Let's dive into the positives of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. And I gotta start with the story. It was a killer story. It's something that we've seen countless of times, but it's something that I feel like this series kind of needed at this point again. It wasn't a generic story like these teenagers on a road trip and then running into this cannibalistic family. It wasn't quite like that. It was basically about these friends who bought this remote town. It was pretty much deserted in Texas. And they happened to come across this orphanage where this house mother was still residing in. Something happens that actually wakes Leatherface's wrath. And it's a good enough reason for this movie to actually exist. Keep in mind, folks, let me just make something clear here. And most of y'all probably already know this by now, but this is a straight up sequel to the original. They did the same thing that they tried to do with Texas Chainsaw 3D, but this one was done a little bit better than that one, I do admit. And I'll get into the reason for that later, but basically these kids raid into this house mother that just happens to be watching over Leatherface for the past 50 years. I don't know, it doesn't really get into too much detail on that. But without getting too much away, something does happen. And like I said, it's a good enough reason that they used to wake Leatherface's wrath. Because like I say, he's been dormant for 50 years. Or nearly 50 years, give or take. And like I said, this is a direct sequel to the original. And it doesn't do any of these stupid-ass tropes that Texas Chainsaw 3D did. They got rid of that dumbass continuity issue with the phones. They actually set it in this timeline in 2022, or 2021, whenever it was actually made. And they don't have this family squabble, which I never really was a fan of in the last two films. They get rid of all that because in doing so, when they did that in the last two films, they kind of took away the fear and the tenseness of what made Leatherface. So that's why I never really liked that. But they got rid of all that, and they just pretty much started off with a clean slate. They just used it in a better sense. They made this film in a way to where it clears off a lot of the mistakes that the last two films did. It was better writing, and as I said about the continuity issues that Texas Chainsaw 3D had, it was a lot better in the writing. It wasn't as lazy as that film was. And that all comes down to the writing. When I found out who was actually making this, now granted, this person didn't direct this movie, but Fede Álvarez and his partner, which I'm not going to pronounce the name because I don't want to butcher it, but They were behind the writing of this particular film. And Fede Álvarez was the guy that gave us the Don't Breathe movies and the Evil Dead remake. He only directed the first Don't Breathe film. And his writing partner directed the second one. And Fede Álvarez also directed the Evil Dead remake. And as good as that film was, I knew this wasn't going to be a letdown. Yet I still tried to walk in with low expectations because you never know nowadays. But the guys behind Don't Breathe and Evil Dead, the Evil Dead remake, they hadn't really let me down yet. So when I found out that they were the creativity team behind this film, it gave me hope. And that it definitely did. It definitely did live up to expectations, to what little I had at first. In other words, it kind of surprised me. It was just a very well crafted TCM film. And it was one that we needed for a while. Even though I said I didn't have too much of a problem with the last two films, and I thought the last film, Leatherface, was something new, it needed to go back to the basics. And I said that about Texas Chainsaw 3D, or I said that about the remakes, or one of them. But they really go back to the basics with this one. But yeah, it was a very well crafted horror film. It was a very well crafted TCM film. And that has a lot to do with the carnage. Oh my God, was there ever carnage candy in this? For any horror fan or any TCM fan out there that loves that stuff, you'll definitely get that here. Especially with the bus scene. Without giving too much away, I'll just say that tops about any scene in any of the previous films since the beginning. That scene just made the movie for me. And that was one of the scenes that was talked about a lot. As I said, I read reviews. Some of them are mixed to positives, but everybody kept on mentioning that scene. And the more everybody kept on mentioning that scene, the more I was like, damn, I'm very intrigued. And when I saw it in the trailer, I knew that was going to be the bloodiest scene in this film. I knew that scene wasn't going to hold anything back. And damn, was it satisfying. I lost count of the body count. That's how gory it got. It kind of reminded me of the Hellraiser 3 club scene, only on a bus.
Try anything and you cancel, bro.
And it all deals with Leatherface. This is supposed to be the Gunnar Hansen version. And I heard some reviewers say that they had a problem with that. Like, he was kind of smart, which he did kind of come off as a little smarter in this. He was smart enough to hide behind doors and set up traps in a way. It's been 50 years. Even somebody with that mental capacity, how he was in the original film, he's been dormant for 50 years. So I would think he would be able to learn a few new tricks along the way. And that's what made him scary. That's what made him the most tense and the most awesome for me since the remake version. If I was to do a Leatherface ranking, which I'm not saying I will anytime soon, it would be difficult for me. I'll say if I do it later on down the road, it might be a little easier, but now, it's a tie-in with the guy that played him in the remakes and this guy in this film. So, yeah. There's even a scene where somebody was killed in the other side of a swinging door, and you could see the door swinging and, like, barely seeing what's happening. But you get the gist, and it comes clear, like, a second after that. That's how clever this was. That's how clever this movie was shot. The pacing never let up. It was non-stop. As soon as the movie started, there wasn't a single dull moment in this film. I promise you that. Especially once the carnage candy started, you'll be in horror movie fan heaven. And the characters played by Sarah Yarkin and Elsie Fisher, I didn't really have a problem with. Now, I know I've heard some YouTubers saying that they wish like one of the characters in this would just die instantly because they hated him. But I never really had a problem with him. You have this one character who suffers from PTSD. Apparently some bad shit happened to her earlier on before the movie started. And it really made you feel for her. It really did. You know, all the characters was done to my liking. I didn't really have a problem with any of them. They done some good characters other than one, which I'll get to here in a little bit. There's some very good jump scares in this too. Now, since this didn't have a theatrical release, which you'll hear me bitching about again and again in this review, I was able to go up front to our 82-inch screen and I turned on the big surround sound, and I turned it up to a certain extent to where it was loud. That really helped. And there was plenty of moments in this film. He would appear behind somebody, and I was like, oh, watch out behind you. Yeah, that's how I was. I was like the typical average horror fan that just kept on yelling at the screen. Kind of like Randy did the Scream when he was watching Halloween in that scene. Yeah. But my advice, if you have the equipment, if you have the technology, go and turn on your big surround sound, if you have it, on your big-ass screen TV. Turn this movie on and full blast with the sound and have fun. Thank me later. The lighting was done very well. It was beautifully shot, especially in the cornfield scene. It shows Leatherface walking off at the distance after he kills the first victims, and then it pans to a storm out in the distance. That looked really cool. I swear this was a perfect film that could have been awesome to see in the theaters. God, I really wish they would have showed it in theaters. But it looked perfect. It looked really good, you know. Like I said, it would have been perfect for the big screen. As much as I enjoyed Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because I really did, I'm planning on seeing it again, I still had my issues. In which, let's dive into the negatives. Sally Hardesty, the sole survivor from the original film. I felt like she was kind of a waste. It was like a definite wasted potential there. It had potential. She had potential. But I just felt like they ripped off Halloween 2018 so much in this, because it was the same motivation, it's the same plot line that Jamie Lee Curtis had with Halloween in that film, but they did it in a much weaker way in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. I felt like if you just take her out of the film completely, just re-edit this film, it would have been just as fine, because she didn't really do all that much. All she did was like look at a picture of her friends from the original, a very old picture. It's time for you to move on. It's been 50 years. I know you're saddened by that. Anybody would be, but I think they would want you to move on. Just saying. She didn't really do that much. Just re-edit the movie, if you got the technology, and just cut her out of it, and it would have been just as fine. And this is my own little pet peeve. And like I say, you'll be hearing about this again, and this will be the last time. But this could have really been a real good theater experience for myself anyway. I know I complain about this all the time and it's just the way of the world, but it is what it is. But this would have been a really great theater experience, and I felt like I would have had a 10 times better of an experience. Not that I'm saying I didn't enjoy this, because I really did, but going to the theater, it would have completed me. I just think it would have done better if it wasn't for the theatrical absence. And you know, certain Netflix movies has hit theaters before. So what gives? And the whole reason why they skipped the theatrical release is because they kept on testing it for audiences, and you know, all bad. But other movies managed to slip in a theatrical release regardless. So what gives? Again, what was the difference between this one and many other movies that tested about the same? Just saying. All in all, guys, despite all that, I had an excellent time with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. It is definitely a TCM film worth watching, and I definitely recommend it for any horror fan out there. And granted, it may not be for everybody, but then what movie is? But it was definitely for me, that's for sure. So if you're looking for a bloody good time, you'll definitely get that here. If you can get past the whole theatrical absence and the Sally character, you'll be able to put this on a pedestal. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, what did you think about it? Did you find it to be the most grueling, the most grittiest, the most bloodiest, goriest, carnage candy-filled film of them all? Was this a worthy sequel? Was it up to your expectations? Or was this not for you? Would you rather see the series die off completely for good? Leave me your comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. And I will see you on the next one. Stay tuned for a ranking of these, which is coming real soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.